Okay, so today we're going to do a deep dive into something super important for anyone in manufacturing, and especially if you're in any kind of regulated industry.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about audit readiness.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting is that we hear audit, and I think people
Yeah.
immediately get a little tense.
Yeah.
But really what we want to do is like flip that script a little bit
Yeah.
and think of it more as an opportunity
Absolutely.
to showcase, how awesome you are.
Exactly, and how strong your systems are.
Yeah, and I think that's really what audit readiness is all about. It's
Yeah.
not just about passing the audit.
Right.
It's about really building that robust operation.
Yes, and we're going to go even a step further
Mm-hmm.
and talk about some of the advanced topics like KPA,
Yeah.
corrective and preventive action and risk management, all these things that really play a role
Absolutely.
in making sure you're truly audit ready.
So just to give you a sense of what we've looked at,
Yeah.
we've got those foundational regulations. Your 21 CFR is like 110, 111, 211. Those are the real core ones, right, for food and drugs.
Absolutely.
But we've also gone deeper.
Yeah.
We've looked at specific industry guidelines. We've even got some transcripts from, FDA training sessions
Yeah.
and webinars from experts in the field.
That's great.
So a real wealth of information to pull from.
So we're covering a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics. When you think about getting ready for an audit, what's the first thing that pops into your mind?
Proactive.
Proactive.
Absolutely proactive. This is not something you can just, cram for the night before.
Right.
You can't pull an all-nighter
Right.
for audit readiness. This needs to be baked into your day-to-day operations.
Absolutely.
And it's an ongoing state of mind. And
Yeah.
one of the most effective tools for really getting into that proactive mindset is doing mock inspections.
Oh, mock inspections.
Yeah,
That's like a fire drill.
exactly. That's like a fire drill for your quality system.
Right. You want to make sure everyone knows where to go, what to do.
Exactly. And it gives you that opportunity to find those little weak spots.
Yeah, those vulnerabilities.
In a safe environment, right? Before the real pressure is on.
Yeah. No one's going to shut you down based on a mock inspection.
Exactly. So you can really learn and improve.
So it's a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
So beyond these mock inspections,
Mhm.
what else falls under this whole idea of being proactive?
Well, I think a huge part of it is this idea of continuous improvement.
Oh, yeah, continuous improvement.
It's not just about meeting the bare minimum.
Right.
The regulations set a floor,
Yeah, foundation.
but you want to be striving to go above and beyond that.
So it's not just a checklist.
No. It's about looking at your processes and saying, how can we make this better?
How can we always be getting better?
Exactly. And that's something auditors really pick up on.
Mm-hmm. They can see that you're not just complacent.
Yeah, they can see that you're actively engaged in quality.
Okay, so we're being proactive.
Hmm.
We're always looking for ways to improve. And I'm guessing this all really hinges on good documentation.
Oh, you hit the nail on the head there.
Documentation is key.
Yeah, we actually looked at the transcript from this annual GMP refresher training that the FDA did back in 2022.
Oh, interesting.
And they were very clear.
Yeah.
Bad documentation, that's a big no-no.
Right.
It's like the first impression you make with the auditors.
Right.
And if that's bad, it can really set a negative tone for the whole audit.
And it makes their job harder, too.
Exactly.
If they can't follow your trail of thought through your documentation.
Yeah, they're going to have more questions.
Exactly.
They're going to dig deeper.
Right.
And that's not what you want.
No, that's not what you want. So when we're talking about good documentation practices for audit readiness, what are some of those key things that we need to be thinking about?
Well, a lot of the sources really highlight some basic but really important things. So if you're doing any kind of handwritten records,
Yeah.
make sure you've got enough space for all the entries.
Right. Legible.
Legible, using permanent ink.
Oh, yeah.
So no pencils.
Right.
And never, ever overwrite a mistake.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you make a mistake, what you want to do is cross it out with a single line initial and date it.
So you can see what the original entry was.
Exactly. You want to have that transparency
Right.
and accountability.
So that's handwritten records. What about those batch records?
Oh, the batch records. Those are critical.
Yeah.
I mean, we looked at 6 FDA 21 CFR Part 211 production and process controls and also the pharmaceutical master validation plan.
Right.
And they both really stress that the batch record needs to tell the whole story of that particular batch.
The life story.
The life story, exactly.
Yeah.
So how was it made? What controls were in place? Or all the materials, right?
Right.
Was the facility inspected before you started?
Right.
Everything needs to be documented.
And it needs to be verifiable.
Exactly.
Okay, and 21 CFR 211.122, I think you mentioned.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
It's a big one. It talks about the need for written procedures for all aspects of material handling.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's a lot of procedures.
It is a lot. It covers everything from receiving and identifying the materials to how you store them,
Yeah.
how you sample them,
Right.
how you test them.
Makes sense.
And that's not just for the product itself, it's
Oh.
also for the labeling and packaging materials.
So every component that goes into the final product.
Every single piece. And there was a YouTube transcript that really drove this home.
Yeah.
It was on 21 CFR 111 GMP laboratory overview.
Okay.
And they were focusing on dietary supplements.
Right.
But the message was the same.
Yeah.
You need those clear written procedures for every single lab operation.
Makes sense. So, okay, we've got our procedures, we've got our documentation, we've done our mock inspections. We're feeling pretty good.
We're feeling ready.
Yeah, and the audit team walks in the door. What do we do now?
Well, don't panic.
Okay.
We actually got some really helpful tips from the FDA's Clinical Investigator Training course,
Okay.
the CITC, and this was for the 2024 course. Now, they mentioned that some inspections, you might get a little heads up,
Okay.
like maybe 5 days in advance.
A little pre-announcement.
Yeah, but the length of the inspection itself, that can really vary.
Oh, okay.
It often depends on how many protocols they're looking at.
Right, so if it's a more complex operation, it might take longer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one really crucial piece of advice they gave was about those serious non-compliance issues.
Okay.
If the investigators flag something during the inspection,
Yeah.
you need to take it seriously, right then and there.
So don't wait until the end to address it.
No.
Okay.
Don't think, oh, we'll just fix it later.
Got it.
They actually suggest you start investigating and correcting it immediately.
Wow. Okay.
If at all possible. Because if you address those concerns right away, you might be able to keep them off the 483.
Oh, the 483. That's the official list of observations, right?
Exactly. It's like their report card. So you
right.
want that to be as clean as possible.
So it shows you're being responsive.
Yeah, it shows you take quality seriously.
You're taking their feedback to heart.
Exactly.
Now, what happens if we disagree with something that the auditor points out?
Well, the good news is you're allowed to disagree.
Okay.
The CITC transcript actually addresses this.
Okay.
It's perfectly acceptable to respectfully disagree with something on that 483.
Okay, respectfully disagree.
Right. It's all about how you handle it.
Okay.
So when you submit your KPA response,
Yeah, our corrective and preventive action plan.
right, you need to include a clear explanation of why you disagree,
Okay.
your rationale, and any documentation that supports your position.
So you got to back it up.
Exactly.
Okay, the audit is done. Everyone said their goodbyes. Now what's next? What happens in that follow-up phase?
The follow-up is crucial, and this is where that KPA process really kicks into gear.
Okay, tell me more about this KPA process.
Well, we saw in Season 7 Advanced cGMP Topics that KPA is really a cycle. It starts with identifying the issue, then you take action to correct it,
Right.
but then you got to go further.
Yeah.
You got to prevent it from happening again.
So it's not just a one and done.
No, it's about continuous improvement.
Right.
And the book KPA for the FDA-regulated industry, they actually break down the different parts of a KPA plan.
Okay.
So you've got your corrective action. That's the immediate fix.
Okay.
Then you might have some interim corrective actions.
Okay.
Those are kind of like Band-Aids until you can implement the permanent solution.
Got it.
And then you've got those all-important preventative actions.
Right. To stop it from happening again?
Exactly. And they suggest that a good KPA plan takes about 2 to 4 weeks to develop.
That seems reasonable.
Yeah, it's not something you can just rush through.
No, you got to really think it through.
You got to do your root cause analysis.
Right.
Figure out what went wrong and how to prevent it in the future.
Okay, so we've got our KPA plan. We're working on implementing it. And I think you mentioned the FDA looks at the investigators' recommendations.
Yeah, that came up in the Understanding FDA Inspections and Data YouTube transcript.
Okay.
Apparently, those recommendations carry a lot of weight.
So the investigator has some influence on the overall outcome.
Oh, yeah, and most companies respond to the 483 within 15 business days.
Okay.
But there's this one classification on the FDA dashboard that you really want to avoid.
Oh, what is it?
It's called OAI.
OAI.
Official Action Indicated.
Okay.
And basically it means the FDA is not happy.
Not happy at all.
No. They've found some serious GMP issues,
Okay.
and they're probably going to take some further action.
So OAI is a bad sign.
Yeah. It's a sign that you've got some work to do.
Okay, so let's talk about risk. How does risk management fit into this whole audit readiness thing?
Well, risk management is really becoming a cornerstone of GMP.
Okay.
And it's all about being proactive.
Right.
Instead of just waiting for things to go wrong.
We're trying to prevent them in the first place.
Exactly. And season 3, key elements of good manufacturing practices. That's a good introduction to risk management.
Okay.
And it talks about QRM.
QRM.
Quality risk management.
Okay.
And this involves assessing your risks, controlling them, communicating them, and then reviewing them on a regular basis.
So it's a cycle.
It is a cycle.
Yeah.
And the main guidance document for QRM is ICH-Q9.
ICH-Q9.
Got it. Yeah, and that lays out the main principles.
So what are those core principles of risk management?
Well, there are 2 big ones.
Okay.
First, your risk assessment needs to be based on science.
Makes sense.
You got to understand your processes, and ultimately, you got to be focused on protecting the patient.
Of course, patient safety is paramount.
Absolutely. And the second principle
Yeah.
is that your risk management effort should match the level of risk. So you don't need to go overboard on something that's a minor risk.
So it's a risk-based approach.
Exactly. You want to focus your resources where they'll have the biggest impact.
That makes sense. So how does all this risk management stuff play out in real life?
Well, we saw a really good example in the FDA CITC 2024 Day 3 transcript.
Okay.
They talked about using risk assessments to identify what they call critical to quality factors.
Okay.
And these are things that could really impact the quality of your product.
Makes sense.
And they use these risk assessments throughout the whole life cycle of a study.
Oh, wow.
From the design to the conduct to the analysis.
That's pretty comprehensive.
It is.
Yeah.
And then there's a book by Adrian P.G.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about cell therapy facilities.
Okay.
And it gives a really interesting example of how risk management even affects the design of the facility itself.
Oh, wow.
So, for example, they talk about using positive pressure in manufacturing suites. And that's a risk control measure.
So it's not just about the processes, it's about the physical environment as well.
Exactly. You're trying to protect the product from any potential contamination.
It's all interconnected.
Yeah. And then there's FMEA.
FMEA.
Failure mode and effects analysis.
Yeah.
And that's a tool that's often used to figure out where things could go wrong in a process.
Okay, so you're proactively identifying potential problems.
Exactly. And then you can put in place preventive actions.
To stop them from happening.
Right. And we saw that mentioned in quality risk management in the FDA-regulated industry.
So risk management is really about being proactive and preventing problems before they even happen.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground here, but we got to talk about what's on the horizon.
Right.
What are some of those emerging regulatory expectations and industry trends?
Well, one thing that's been really clear from the data we've looked at is that data integrity is a huge focus for the FDA right now.
Data integrity.
Yeah, and we're seeing this reflected in the 483 observations. So citations for things like 21 CFR 211.22D, which talks about the quality control unit's responsibilities, and 2ORID 11.192, which is all about reviewing production records.
Okay.
Those are way up.
So they're really cracking down on data management practices.
They are, because if your data isn't accurate and reliable, you're setting yourself up for problems.
Right. Garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. And this ties into the whole trend towards electronic records and electronic signature.
Yeah, 21 CFR Part 11.
That's the big one.
Okay.
And there's also a YouTube video on good documentation practices for electronic systems.
Interesting.
And they all stress the importance of things like audit trails, control over document issuance.
Right.
And a big one is making sure that original data is recorded directly into the official system.
Oh, okay. So no more scribbling on sticky notes and then transferring it later.
No. That raises all sorts of data integrity red flags.
Right, because you could change it. You could lose the sticky note.
Exactly. So get it into the system right away.
Got it. So what other trends are you seeing out there?
Well, there's a lot of talk about advanced therapies.
Oh, yeah. Cell and gene therapy.
Exactly. And we touched on this in Season 1 Foundations and History of cGMPs. But these are really complex products.
They're living systems.
Right. And that means even stricter controls.
Makes sense.
Especially around things like contamination and chain of custody.
Yeah, you got to make sure you know where those cells have been.
Exactly. Every step of the way.
Yeah.
And then there's this new thing that the FDA is doing.
Hey, what's that?
It's called a Remote Regulatory Assessment.
Okay.
Or RRA.
RRA.
And they talked about this in the FDA CITC 2024 Day 3 transcript. And basically, it's a way for them to assess compliance remotely.
Oh, wow. So they don't even have to come to your site.
Yeah, it can be mandatory or voluntary.
Interesting.
But it's definitely a trend to watch.
So be prepared for your close-up, even if it's through a screen.
Exactly. And then another big concept is quality by design.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
And this is really taking off in clinical trials.
Yeah.
ICH-E8R1 talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so does the FDA CITC 2024 Day 1 transcript.
Okay.
And the idea is that you're building quality into the trial from the very beginning.
So it's not just an afterthought.
Exactly. It's part of the design.
Got it. And ICHQ5A.
Yes.
That one emphasizes comparability.
Yeah, especially for biotech and biological products.
Okay.
If you make any changes to the manufacturing process,
Mm-hmm.
you got to show that the product is still comparable.
So you're not introducing any unintended changes.
Exactly. And finally, there's this report, a 10-year analysis of FDA 483 observations.
Mm-hmm.
And their big takeaway was that collaboration and technology are key.
Collaboration and technology.
Yeah. The industry needs to work together and invest in new technologies to make sure the drug supply chain is safe and reliable.
Okay, so that's a lot of information.
It is a lot.
If we had to boil it all down to the essentials, what are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Yeah. Well, I'd say it comes down to a few things.
Yeah.
Number one, proactive audit preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Mock inspections are your friend.
Okay.
Number two, documentation.
Right, got to get that right.
It's got to be thorough, accurate, and complete.
Okay.
Number three, master the KPA process.
Yeah.
Understand how to correct issues and prevent them from coming back.
Prevent them from coming back.
Number four, embrace quality risk management.
Right.
Make it part of your everyday operations.
Got it.
And number five, stay informed.
Stay informed.
The regulations are always evolving.
Yeah.
New trends are emerging.
Right.
You got to keep up.
So it's not just a one-time thing.
No, audit readiness is an ongoing journey.
It's a way of life.
Exactly.
So for our listeners out there, think about what we've talked about today.
Yeah.
How can you be more proactive in your risk management? How can you implement those continuous improvement principles?
Absolutely.
And what about a mock audit? Could you benefit from a mock audit?
I think everyone could.
Or maybe a deep dive into your documentation? Where could you improve?
That's something to really think about.
Some food for thought.
Yeah.
This has been another deep dive.
It has.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.
See you then.
Bye.